You're going to be under arrest.
For what?
For not listening to me.
I think the emergency is the video, somebody's videotaping.
Okay. And the shirt says, I believe, balls deep. He says his name is Captain Awesome.
Hey guys, got an interesting video for you here today, and what we're doing is a deposition of the mayor of Cresson City. This is Cresson City, Texas. What this deposition is about is the city filed a lawsuit, two lawsuits actually, against the Councilman Jack Farr and against some of his business interests. One being a motorsport kind of like complex, the other having to deal with the water system that he put in place and was servicing and everything, and their contract negotiations with that. Now what's interesting is that they filed these lawsuits about a week and a half before his re-election vote was coming up. So definitely politically motivated, in my opinion, to, you know, possibly try to get him out of office. Maybe, you know, some of their cronies and put them in office. But this is a very interesting deposition. Again, this is the mayor, Tina Conway. Kind of a longer video as you expect. It's a deposition. But I think it's an interesting deposition. Again, this is dirty politics and how they play out. So enjoy the video, guys. Leave me a comment down below in the comment section about what you think about this you know, deposition, what you think about the lawsuits. You can look up you know, news stories and stuff on that. It's Cresson City versus Jack Farr, F-A-R-R, to see more of the details of the allegations against Mr. Farr. Are these, you know, two dirty political entities going at it? Possibly. I don't know either entity. I don't know Cresson City. I don't know Jack Farr. So I can't make a judgment call based on that. I've seen nothing to either side, but it does seem politically convenient to file these lawsuits 2 weeks before his re-election is coming up. So without further ado, guys, check out the video, let me know what you think, and we'll see you guys on the next one. All right.
On the record at 9:19 a.m. My name is Don Harris, representing Veritex. The date today is April 27th, 2021. This deposition is being held at Hadfield and Stout, Fort Worth, Texas. The name of the witness is Tina Conway. Attorneys, please state your appearance.
Lisa Lumley here on behalf of Jack Farr and Vail Management.
Joe Tolber on behalf of Superformance.
This is Mark Stout and Chris Orisco. We're here on behalf of the plaintiff.
Sam Reed, here on behalf of Cresson.
Agreements?
We had reached some written agreements prior to the start of the deposition. I don't remember each of them, but I assume counsel agrees to them because we agreed to them in writing, and they'll be incorporated in the deposition.
Can you specify what agreements that we agreed to, just to make sure there's no confusion?
I don't recall them all. Joe, do you have them handy?
In general, it was just that this would be limited in time and it wouldn't be considered a complete deposition. We'd be able to come back to finish at a later time. That this was.
I agree, to the extent that it also applies to your client, that when we take his deposition on Thursday, that we may have additional follow-up questions, certainly after written discovery is produced.
Yeah, and that's agreed by me. Joe Tolber.
The other agreement that I think we should do is just say this is pursuant to the rules.
Certainly, perhaps with the exception of having to sign it to be able to use it because we're working on such a short time frame.
I don't have any problem waiving signature.
And then the other thing that we need to state on the record before we get going is, of course, we are participating in these in an effort just to move things along. We're not doing it, the fact that we're doing it is not a waiver of any of our rights or any of our claims that the lawsuit isn't validly brought, or that discovery shouldn't be brought or conducted before certain other requisites happen. So we're just moving forward in an effort to move things along, but not without waiving any of our rights. Okay. I don't need you to agree to that.
I
just
don't
have to
agree
say
to
it.
that, so we'll just, you can put whatever you want on the record and I'll stay silent as to it.
All right, I believe we're ready to swear the witness.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Conway, let's start with introduction of your full name.
Tina Petite Conway.
And what do you do for a living, Ms. Conway?
I'm the mayor for the City of Cresson.
Is that the only thing you do?
Officially.
Objection form.
Do you do anything else for a living?
No.
Okay. You don't have any other construction projects, no other businesses that are doing development in Cresson?
No businesses.
Okay. I was under the impression that you were working on a development in Cresson. Is that correct?
Objection form.
No.
It's not correct?
No.
Okay, you have no involvement with any developments, any residential, any commercial real estate developments in Cresson?
Objection form.
I am a property owner that is it's not being developed yet.
Okay. So
I'm a property owner in Cresson, and there are folks that want to develop it.
okay. So you are involved then in getting, for example, zoning variances on behalf of that property, correct?
Objection form.
State that again. Say that one more time, Lisa.
Well, we'll get to it, I guess, in more detail, but it's a fairly large tract of land, right? Some 300 plus acres that you own?
Incorrect.
Okay, how much?
627.
Okay, so 627
And
acres.
actually, let me
And
just
Mayor,
clarify that.
Let me be clear, after she asks her question, if you'll give just a pause to allow me to object.
Oh, no,
because
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, this whole line of questioning is probably objectionable and I'm about to cut it off. So, counsel, will you go ahead and ask your question?
Can you read back my question, please?
Okay, so 620.
627 acres is what you own?
No.
Objection form.
Gosh, Amanda, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
No, I don't own that. My mother owns the ranch.
Okay. So I thought a moment ago you said you were a property owner.
I
in
know, and I
Cresson.
shouldn't have said that. I stand corrected. It is really, if you want to get to it, it's really my mom owns it.
Okay. Does your mom own it in her individual capacity?
Objection form. You can answer.
I don't understand what individual capacity means.
Does she own it in a corporation or does she own it in her name?
Objection form.
In a trust.
Are you a beneficiary or a trustee of that trust that owns the 627 acres?
Objection form. Counsel, can you tell me the relevance as to the lawsuit of the mayor's mom's trust?
Is there an objection pending?
Yes, objection form.
Okay. Are you a beneficiary or a trustee of the trust?
I'm going to object again, and I'm going to put on the record that counsel is unable to articulate why she believes that this question is relevant. You can answer the question. If we go down this line of thinking or line of questioning much farther, we're going to cut it off, and if we have to, we'll call the judge.
Are you a beneficiary or a trustee of the trust that owns the 627 acres?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, which? The trustee or the beneficiary or both?
Both.
Okay, so you're here today on behalf of the city, correct?
Correct.
And you know we're here on a temporary injunction that's been entered against 3 defendants, correct?
Objection form, that's not correct. That's a vague, ambiguous question that's not accurate. You do not have to answer that question.
So you're going to refuse to answer how many defendants are in this temporary injunction, is that correct?
Objection for counsel. I'd like to explain to you the difference between injunction and temporary restraining order. Right now we're here on a TRO. There's not an injunction that's been entered. Is that correct?
Let me rephrase the question. There are 3 defendants in this lawsuit, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Veil Management, Jack Farr, and Superformance, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 1.
Thank you.
Now, Exhibit 1 is also Exhibit A to plaintiff's application for temporary restraining order, isn't it? Or do you know?
Yes.
All right, and it shows on here 7 identified structures, for lack of a better word, correct? Numbers 1 through 7?
Yes.
And what is your understanding of what Exhibit 1 is?
This shows the various buildings at Motorsport Ranch that have not followed the proper procedures for permitting and then construction.
Okay, so let's start with building number 1. Do you know what building number 1 is?
I am not familiar exactly with what it is. If these are the buildings that are along ones, because Lisa, the entire map is not on there, it's hard for me to tell if these are the 2. 1 and 7 are the ones that are the, I guess you would call them storage garages with garage doors on them.
Okay, so if I showed you a picture of what's been marked on here as Exhibit number 1, would you be able to recognize it?
Objection form.
I'm not sure.
Okay. If I showed you a picture of what's been marked on here as Exhibit number 2, would you be able to recognize what it is?
Objection form.
I don't see Exhibit number 2. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry if I said Exhibit number 2. Okay, do you see on Exhibit 1 where there is a number 2 and an arrow?
Yes.
Okay. And I assume that number 2 is one of the structures that the City of Cresson is complaining about, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What is number 2 on Exhibit 1?
It is a building that has vehicles inside of it. That was the original, one of the first buildings that were in question that didn't have the proper permitting.
Okay. What kind of building is it?
Objection form.
It's a metal structure.
Okay.
Does
it have doors? Does it have walls? Is it enclosed?
There are walls on it now. It is enclosed. There are, to my recollection, I've not toured the building, there are garage doors of some sort. I know you can see inside it. There's windows.
Okay. Now let's turn to number 3. What type of buildings are number 3 on Exhibit 1?
Oh, you know what? That's 171. I think if you turn this upside down, I can speak to it better.
Well, sure, you can turn it however you'd like.
These are garages with doors from the best I can remember.
And when you say these, you're referring to the buildings that are marked as number 3?
3, 4, and 5.
Okay, 3, 4, and 5 are all garages?
Well, when you say garage, they look like garages to me. I don't know what's in them. I wasn't there when they were structured.
Okay. Now you said you hadn't toured the property. Have you been on the property recently at all?
I have been on the property. I just don't get off the road.
Off what road?
Performance Court.
Okay, just
Public
trying to
road.
be clear.
Mhm.
And so are these buildings you see from Performance Court?
I see them better from 171 and County Road 1000.
When was the last time you were on Performance Court?
Probably this weekend.
Okay. What was your purpose to go there this weekend on Performance Court?
I was just cutting through to go. I make my rounds through the city, and I like to go up through there, down by Lancaster, because we have some troublesome areas where people aren't keeping their houses tidy. So I just turn off, go around, make my loop around the city, and come back.
So the purpose of your going through Motorsport Ranch on Performance Court this last weekend was just part of your general tour. It wasn't to specifically look at Motorsport Ranch, is that correct?
This time, correct.
Okay. When was the last time you were on Motorsport Ranch to look at the Motorsport Ranch buildings?
Objection form. You can answer. I'm sorry. You guys are talking right on top of each other, and I just need to make sure that there is a 2-second gap between it.
Would you repeat that, please?
Sure. When was the last time you were on the Motorsport Ranch property to look at the Motorsport Ranch buildings that are at issue in this lawsuit?
I don't think I've ever gone for that purpose. I've met with Jack on inside his buildings, Mr. Farr, Councilman Farr. The person that does that is the city inspector, Dennis McKenzie.
Okay. Let me just be clear then on part of that and then ask a follow-up question. So you've never gone to Motorsport Ranch to inspect or look at or review any of the buildings on Motorsport Ranch. You've left that to the inspector, correct?
Objection form.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now you said you met with Jack in his buildings. When was that?
Summer of 2020.
What was the purpose of that meeting in the summer of 2020?
Jack had called a meeting, or Councilman Farr had called a meeting for me to meet a gentleman named Doug Franklin.
Okay, I'll bite. What was the purpose of meeting with Doug Franklin?
Avid Bank was considering, per Doug, Avid Bank would want to consider moving somewhere on Councilman Farr's property or inside of Cresson.
Okay, so the Avid Bank was meeting with you to talk with you about bringing business to Cresson. Then, in essence.
No, because let me pause. No, it wasn't really Avid Bank itself. It was just an employee that wanted to, and he's actually a citizen in Cresson, and he wanted to ask us about the city, anything out of Hood County that might help him find an area for them to move.
Okay. Which building did y'all meet in?
It's not on this exhibit, but it's the main Drive Exotic building.
Okay. Let's see, I think I got distracted from our Exhibit 1, that is Exhibit A to the application. What is building number 6?
I do not know.
Okay. So then is it fair with, at least with respect to building 6, you don't know why it might not meet? Let me rephrase that question. You don't know what violation building 6 might have?
Objection form.
It is a bad question. Can you tell me, for building number 6, any violation that building 6 has for its for the ordinances of Cresson?
I can't tell you specifically.
Okay. What about buildings number 5? Can you tell me specifically what ordinance they violate?
What ordinance? Proper permitting was not done prior to construction. I'm sorry, maybe that should apply to number 6 too.
Okay.
I was thinking more in detail, but when you build, you have to have a permit.
So what kind of permit did building number 6 require?
I don't know.
Objection form.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Just
What kind
a
of
legal conclusion.
what kind of permit did building number 5 require?
Objection form.
I don't know.
Is it the same? I don't want to drag you through all of them. Is it the same I don't know answer for buildings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7?
Objection form.
It is the same.
Do you know if any permits exist for any of the buildings numbered 1 through 7?
Lisa, would that include permits that are that have not gone out of their time frame, that have not expired?
Sure.
I don't know.
Do you know which of the buildings 1 through 7 require a certificate of occupancy?
Objection form.
No, I don't know.
Now I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 2. Do you recognize that as plaintiff's application for temporary restraining order that was filed in this case?
Counsel, do you have a complete copy?
No.
To the extent that you're going to ask her about questions that incorporate any exhibits to it, we'll make sure that we get a complete copy, okay?
Sure. Ms. Conway, do you recognize Exhibit 2 as the application for temporary restraining order that the City of Cresson filed in this case, other than it does not attach the voluminous exhibits?
Yes.
Okay. Now let me turn to, let's start with page 1, paragraph 1. In the middle of that paragraph, it states, on at least 7 separate construction projects located at the Motorsport Ranch facility, a sprawling racetrack on several hundred acres, defendants have failed to request the appropriate building permits. Do you see where I've read that?
Yes.
And we've just gone over the map, and you're not certain which permits were required, correct?
Objection form.
What I'm certain of is that the city inspector has all that detail, and I can get it. I just don't know it off the top of my head per building.
Okay. Did you know it last week, a week before, or is this just something that you delegate to the inspector? I'm just trying to get your memory on this.
I've been taken through it before.
Okay. So do you know what the appropriate building permits are for each of these buildings?
Objection form.
No. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. Now, the next part of this says, the defendants have failed to pay the building permit fees. I'm still in that same sentence. I'm going to ask about each of the items in the sentence. We talked about defendants have failed to request the appropriate building permits, and you said that you didn't know what they were off the top of your head.
Objection form.
Correct?
Objection form.
Correct.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask about pay the building permit fees. You don't know what the specific building fees are as you sit here, do you?
No, I do not.
Okay. And then failed to coordinate with the city inspector. What do you mean by that?
That's not me.
I thought I turned it off.
Do you want to repeat that, please?
Yeah. I'm reading from Exhibit 2, which is the plaintiff's application for temporary restraining order. And there's an allegation that defendants failed to coordinate with the city inspector. What kind of coordination did defendants fail to do?
Well, number one, to allow the city inspector to do his job. And number two, typically what happens is that there's phone calls back and forth, there's personal visits, more than likely, and that did not happen in some cases on some buildings.
But it happened on some cases on some other buildings.
Objection form.
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know how many phone calls or texts Mr. Farr sent to the building inspector?
No.
Do you know how many times the building inspector asked Jack Farr to inspect buildings?
No.
Okay. Turning to page 2, at the top of the page, there's an allegation that the buildings have never been properly inspected or had a certificate of occupancy issued by the City of Cresson. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What kind of buildings require certificates of occupancy?
Objection form.
I don't know. The city inspector is the subject matter expert in that area.
Okay. And then the next sentence says, although the city has notified defendants in writing of the numerous deficiencies and violations of the city ordinance. Now, let me focus on that language about the numerous deficiencies and violations. What are those numerous deficiencies and violations? Is it just the lack of permits that we mentioned a few moments ago?
It would be hard to answer that because the city inspector is the one that goes and visits and finds those.
Okay, so you're not specifically aware of what those numerous deficiencies and violations are, is that correct?
I have reviewed them at one time, sorry.
No, that's a perfectly good answer, but I need to say objection form first.
I have reviewed those in detail.
Okay, I'm just trying to get what you personally know, and then we've got the deposition of the inspector later today. So,
sure.
As you sit here, you don't know what the numerous deficiencies and violations are, correct?
Objection form.
Well, no, I'm going to leave it to the expert.
Okay. And then it says, well, the first part of that sentence talks about the city has notified defendants in writing. Was that a letter that came from you?
No.
In fact, you've never sent a letter to Jack or to any of his entities about deficiencies in the permits, isn't that correct? You personally, that's on behalf of the city.
Objection
on
form.
behalf of the city.
Have you, as the mayor, ever sent a letter is what the question is on the table.
Oh, no, and I wouldn't. That would be the attorney's job.
Okay, so when it says the city has notified the defendants in writing, you're not aware of any correspondence coming from the city as the city. Any correspondence that you're aware of, all of the correspondence of which you're aware, would be from an attorney. Is that correct?
Objection form. Don't answer that question. It's a vague, intentionally question. Council knows that the city attorney has sent a letter. It's an abusive question, sir.
This is limited to objection form.
Objection form. Don't answer the question. Counsel, can you rephrase the question?
I think that was a little bit abusive on behalf of plaintiff's counsel, but I'm not trying to be abusive, so let's just set that aside. All I'm trying to find out and get confirmation of is that the city hasn't sent any letters to Jack Farr or any of the motorsport ranch entities detailing any deficiencies or violations. Isn't that right?
Objection form.
Well, when I say city, that could be the city or the city attorney. I mean,
see, and that's why I was trying to ask the question that way, because I wanted to find out what the city had done versus what the attorneys had done. So you said that the attorneys had sent a letter, correct?
yes.
Okay. Now, setting aside any correspondence from attorneys, I'm asking specifically about correspondence from the city itself.
From me.
Objection form.
I don't know. I don't recall.
Okay. But
I'm
certainly
sorry.
it would have come from you, right?
Objection form.
No.
Okay. Who might else have sent such a letter?
It could have come from a couple of staff.
Okay. Did you ask the staff whether they had sent any written letters?
Objection form.
No.
Okay. Would they have told you if they were writing such letters?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Where would such letters be kept? Or would they be kept?
They would be kept in the email system.
Okay. Okay. So moving on then, and this ties in with it, the sentence says defendants have willfully and unlawfully ignored the city's demands for compliance. And I want to specifically focus on those demands for compliance. Who sent those demands for compliance?
Objection form.
The city attorneys. And I don't know, like I said earlier, it could have come from the staff. I'm not for sure.
So the only one you are sure about is the one that came from council, correct?
Objection form.
Ms. Conway, there is one question on the table. The only written demand that you are personally aware of as you sit here today is the one that came from council on behalf of the city. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, I've put in front of you what we've got as Exhibit 3, which is an April 22nd, 2020 letter that's addressed to Superformance, Vale Management, and Mr. Farr from the Reed Law Firm. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this April 22nd, 2020 letter that's Exhibit 3 to this deposition, that was sent while you were mayor, correct?
Incorrect.
Okay, so it was before you were mayor.
Correct.
Okay. When did you get elected mayor?
I was sworn in May 12th, 2020.
Are you aware of any letters coming from attorneys to any of the defendants in this case after you became mayor, making demands about permits or ordinances?
No.
Okay. The next sentence of this, flipping back to Exhibit 2, the next sentence says that without having been inspected, the buildings and or structures present a substantial danger of injury or adverse health impact. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So you're saying here that the buildings have not been inspected and you're concerned that there might be health issues, correct?
Safety issues.
Okay.
Safety, and more safety for the citizens.
Sure, I understand that. You got to have safety. No argument there. But And you're concerned about those safety issues because the buildings have not been inspected, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then, since they haven't been inspected...
Well, not only, excuse me. Go ahead.
Okay. So since the buildings haven't been inspected, you're concerned about safety, but you don't know any specifics of something that might be causing a safety issue, correct?
Objection form.
I don't know specifically, but anytime you have a building without the proper inspections along the way, you run a risk to citizens.
As you sit here, you can't point to any specifics, though, of any safety violation that you know of, correct?
Objection form.
Other than that they haven't been inspected.
Correct.
I'm going to move now to paragraph 2, and in the middle of that paragraph, the language says, included in the Motorsport Ranch facility complex is a newly constructed event center at 8883 Performance Court, which is building 18. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware whether or not the construction is done on that building?
I'm not completely for sure because it changes. No.
In fact, you don't know, since it changes, you don't know what the status of construction is on that building, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to skip to page 3 of Exhibit 2, and now we're going to look at paragraph 5, and it says, previous to the start of construction on the MRS properties, I believe that's a typo and it should be MSR, for Motorsport Ranch. But previous to the start of construction on the properties, the city passed and approved a series of zoning ordinances which were revised and compiled in June of 2008. Do you see where I've read that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you're aware that there were a lot of buildings there at Motorsport Ranch prior to June of 2008, correct?
Yes. You know what? I don't really know what buildings were there. I mean, I knew there was a big building for Drive Exotic. I didn't know which buildings Councilman Farr owned, which ones he didn't.
Okay. But certainly the business was there and operational. The Motorsport Ranch business was there and operational before June of 2008, right?
Yes.
And it had at least some buildings as part of its operations, right?
Yes.
I'm going to turn to page 4, and at the top of that page, in the body of paragraph number 6 on that page 4, it's talking about the ordinance requires prior to commencement of any construction of any principal building or structure. Do you see that language, principal building or structures?
Yes.
And I want to ask a question about that, and you may just want to tell me I have to talk to the inspector, and that's fine. But what is a principal building or structure? Do you know?
You would need to talk to the city inspector. That's not my area of specialty, but go ahead.
Okay, so if it's talking about a principal building or structure, that would sound like maybe a small accessory building wouldn't be subject to this.
Objection.
Is that a fair reading?
No, that's not.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So no matter how tiny a building is, it has to be, it counts as a principal building or structure,
Objection
in your opinion?
form.
If you're going to build, you need a permit. Within our guidelines, and the city inspector is the expert on this, he could tell you which buildings. I mean, if you were going to put up a, I can't even think of an example.
Well, let me ask it this way. There are some buildings that don't require permits, right? If
It all depends what you call a building, what your definition of a building is.
Okay. All right, I'm going to skip down to paragraph 9, and it says the city never received the required fees from the owner agents of the MSR Event Center. I want to focus on that concept for a few minutes. There was, let me think about how to. When the original permit for the event center was submitted to the city, there was a check for that, right? It was some $8,000, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that check got returned, correct? Got returned for insufficient funds or something?
To the city, it said insufficient funds.
Okay. Subsequent to that time, Mr. Farr actually gave to you personally a copy of a permit application, a check, and the building engineer drawings, correct? And you refused it, said he had to take it to the inspector?
Let me put it this way. The mayor never receives checks. That's the job of the city secretary.
So then, let me rephrase the question. Mr. Farr gave that stuff to you and you refused it because it was supposed to go somewhere else.
Objection form.
That's partially correct.
Okay, which part's not correct? I'm trying to get it as correct as possible.
Oh, there were several things. He had renamed what the structure was. He had new, I think, more enhanced drawings. And I don't ever, as mayor, I don't ever determine what the price or pricing is. It has to be reviewed by the city inspector. Then he, shares that number with us after he's read the plans.
So the piece that I want to focus on is the piece that Mr. Farr tried to give it to you and you didn't accept it, correct?
Objection form.
It wouldn't be my place to accept it.
I understand what you're saying, that it's not your place to accept it. I just want to focus on that small fact that he tried to give it to you and you did not accept it. That part's correct.
Objection form.
He tried to give it to me. Let me think about that. I did not accept it, nor would I have. That's not my role.
Okay.
Well, I think that needs to be out there. I mean,
Well, sure.
In all fairness.
Yeah, and you've got it out there now. It's not your role to accept it. That I understand that's what you're saying. But my question is slightly narrower, just the piece that Mr. Farr tried to give it to you and you said, no, it needs to go somewhere else.
Objection.
Is that right?
Objection form. You don't have to answer the question.
Are you going to stand and refuse to answer that question on your counsel's advice?
This is the third time, counselor, that you've asked the same question and you don't like the response that she's giving you, and you're asking her to cut off her answer and not give a complete answer on why she did not accept it.
No, I'm just simply asking for a confirmation I haven't gotten yet, and we could move faster if we just got the confirmation. So what I've asked for is a confirmation that he tried to give it to you. I want to make sure that part's clear and that you said no, it needed to go somewhere else.
Objection form. You can answer the question as you see fit.
Yes.
And this was in May of 2020?
Yes.
I'm going to turn to page 5 of Exhibit 2, and paragraph 11
Lisa, can I stop you? I'm having a hard time focusing because there's so much action behind you. Could you just help me focus on you?
Sure. How do I do that?
You remove all the unwrapping of packages and cords, please.
How about we take a break? We'll all go get water and coffee, and we'll let everybody get their cords set up so that you're not distracted.
On record at 10:01 a.m. On the record at 10:19 a.m.
All right, back on the record. You understand you're still under oath, of course, right?
Yes.
All right, we were talking before we broke about the May 2020 incident where Mr. Farr had tried to give you the permit and the check and the engineering drawings, and you had said you weren't the proper person. Just to reorient us, you remember that's where we were talking about that, right?
Correct.
Okay. May of 2020, what was the status of the city council, of the Cresson City offices? Were they open? Were they closed? This was the height of COVID.
We never closed for COVID.
Okay. No, the offices were never closed. There was always somebody there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Paragraph 11, we are on Exhibit 2 still. Paragraph 11 is talking about Mr. Farr failing and refusing to return Mr. McKenzie's inquiries. Were those inquiries from text, phone, email? Do you know?
I don't know.
The next paragraph says, as a result of defendant's continued violation of city ordinances related to construction of new buildings, the city then authorized placement of a stop work order. So I'm going to focus on those words, the city. Who at the city authorized the placement of the stop work order?
The inspector presented what all was going on with the no permitting and no response, and I gave him the verbal okay to go ahead and do that, but first I checked with the city attorneys.
Was that presentation done in a city council meeting?
No.
And to be specific, I'm talking about the presentation that the inspector gave to you about the violations. That was just you personally, it wasn't in a city council meeting, correct?
No, it wasn't on the agenda.
Okay. When was this that you authorized the placement of a stop work order? Oh, it says here in December of 2020. I'm sorry, does that fit with your memory?
Okay. What page are you on, Lisa?
I am on page 5 of Exhibit 2.
Okay.
And let's see if we can clear up that question and answer. You authorized the placement of a stop work order in December of 2020 based on paragraph 12. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then it says that the stop work orders were posted on the MRS Event Center. Did you ever see them posted there?
I saw pictures of them posted.
Okay. Who did you see the pictures from?
The city inspector, Dennis McKenzie, McKinzie.
Did he snap pictures with his phone and then show them to you? Is that how that happened?
Yes.
Did he email those to you or did he show you on his phone?
He emailed those to me.
So you would have copies of those stop work order photographs in your email?
Yes.
Okay. And that's your personal email or is that your mayor email?
That's my mayor email.
And then the paragraph 12 of Exhibit 2 says that within weeks the stop work orders were physically removed from the MRS Event Center building. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see who physically removed them?
The city inspector told me that it was, oh gosh, the first time, was it Jack or was it Josh Huff? I'm not for sure because I know that Josh has removed some, and when the city inspector asked him who gives you the authority, he said Jack Farr.
And you
said
know
to tear them down.
Okay. You know this only from a conversation with the city inspector. You don't know it from a conversation with Jack Huff or with Mr. Farr. Is that correct?
Well, it's Josh Huff, H-O-U-G-H, and I know it from seeing the pictures.
Did
the inspector took pictures?
So the inspector took pictures of Mr. Huff taking down the work orders?
I believe so, or he might have done it right after he tore it up and threw it on the ground. I'm not sure.
Okay. So my question is, you personally didn't see this, correct?
Not real time.
Okay. What you saw was a photograph, correct?
Correct.
Or was it a video?
On that, I think it was a still photo.
Okay. And did the still photo show Mr. Huff taking them down?
I don't remember.
Okay.
If he's actually in the act, but...
Does the photo show Mr. Huff at all?
Yes.
Okay. The next paragraph says that subsequent to the removal of the stop work orders in December of 2020, Mr. McKenzie was authorized to post replacement stop work orders on the MRS Event Center. Let me focus on those words, was authorized. Was that you again, Ms. Conway, that authorized them?
Like I said earlier, what typically happens is when there's a concern with this, breaking of the rules, then I usually get a hold of the city attorneys and I make sure that what the next step should be. And then I relay that to the city inspector.
Okay. So to get back to my question then, on paragraph 13, when it says that Mr. McKenzie was authorized to post replacement stop work orders, you were the person that told Mr. McKenzie that it was okay to move forward with putting up additional stop work orders?
Yes.
And then that paragraph 13 of Exhibit 2 goes on to talk about an employee of Farr approached Mr. McKenzie, accused Mr. McKenzie of trespassing. Is this the same incident that you had talked about a moment ago, about the physical removal of the stop work orders, or is this a different incident?
No, that's the first incident. If it was in December, yeah, in December.
So were there multiple instances where you saw photographs? Let me ask it differently. Were there photographs of multiple instances of Mr. Huff removing stop work orders, or was there only the one incident that you saw photographs of?
Work orders. The second time, it was not only as, well, let me think. Ask your question again, please.
Sure. I'm trying to find out if you've seen photographs of multiple instances, more than one instance, of Mr. Huff removing stop work orders, or whether you've only seen photographs of one incident.
I'm not for sure. I would have to look at my pictures.
Okay. I'm going to turn to paragraph 6 of Exhibit 2. I'm sorry, page 6 of Exhibit 2 in paragraph 14. It's talking about defendants failed to facilitate appropriate inspections, and earlier we talked about the defendants, the allegations that defendants had failed to facilitate appropriate inspections, and you said we needed to talk to the inspector about that, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so you don't know what the defendants were supposed to do to facilitate appropriate inspections. We need to talk to the inspector.
Well, I know that he would need, okay, say it again.
Okay, let me ask the question this way. When you say, when the petition says that defendants failed to facilitate appropriate inspections, how did defendants fail to facilitate appropriate inspections?
Objection form.
They did not reach back out to the city inspector to arrange for the proper inspections or...
Let me ask a question about what you're saying. Are you saying that the defendants didn't ask for inspections, or are you saying that they refused to return calls from McKinsey asking for inspections?
Oh, I would have no idea about that.
Okay, I'm going to skip down just a little bit. The sentence begins, as a result of defendant's failure to arrange for the appropriate inspections with respect to covering of plumbing and the pouring of concrete, the building permits expired on their own terms due to a lack of activity for 6 months. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then continue reading, and then it says, despite the expiration of the building permits, defendants have continued to build. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. If defendants were continuing to build, how was there a lack of activity?
I don't understand that question. How was there a lack of activity?
Yes, ma'am. I'm looking at the allegations of paragraph 14, where it says that the building permits expired by their own terms due to a lack of activity. And then it says the defendants continued to build. So I'm curious as to how there can be a lack of activity if they were continuing to build.
Objection form.
In the process, once you turn in your paperwork, you turn in your check, you engage the city inspector, what they mean by due to lack of activity, Councilman Farr never reached back out and attempted to do what was right and what's required by the city to ensure the safety of all of our citizens. Go ahead.
Okay, so the lack of activity then is what? What was the lack of activity was just failing to get further inspections?
Objection form.
I thought you just asked me that. Let's see.
Well,
Didn't I just answer it?
I'm trying to find out what sort of activity was supposed to occur within 6 months.
I think, like I said earlier, you have to follow the same procedure. You submit your plans in 4 copies. You, from your engineer, you have the city inspector review that, and then he tells you what your permit price is going to be. And then there's checks along the way. For example, with plumbing, you know, he would need to see that before it's finished. When it comes to concrete, the very same thing.
Okay, so
but if you do nothing with keeping with the city requirements, I would consider that lack of activity on the part of Councilman Farr.
Okay. So if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're saying is that at certain points in the construction process, you're supposed to call for more inspections. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know what point in the construction buildings 22, 23, and 24 are at?
No, I do not. And nor would I.
I'm going to turn to page 7 of Exhibit 2. at the top, about the third line down, talks about building number 4 consists of 4 separate carport type structures, and defendants wholly failed to request or obtain a permit on these structures. Were you aware that the former mayor had told Mr. Farr that no permit was required for those structures?
Objection form.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I can't imagine. Is there a document for that?
Let me turn to my next question, which is on Exhibit 2, page 8, paragraph 18. Paragraph 18 is talking about an unknown female who was inquiring about septic permits for a new construction project at Motorsport Ranch. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then at the last sentence of that paragraph talks about defendant Farr nor any third party have requested the issuance of any new construction permits for those proposed construction projects. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Has an RV park started to be constructed?
Objection form.
It's hard to tell what is out there, but the city inspector would be intimately familiar with that.
It's common for people to call the city before they start planning for construction projects, isn't it?
Yes.
What I'm curious about is why the fact that somebody called up and inquired about septic permits is cause for concern.
When they say the word Motorsport Ranch, and we already have so many issues there with not complying to the permits, and especially with somebody that should know them as serving as council member since way back in 2000, either 2 or 3, it makes us wonder, is he trying to do another project without the proper permitting?
So the fact that he called and asked about a permit means he might be moving forward without a permit.
Objection form. Sorry.
No,
there was no he
No.
in the call.
Sorry, she. So the fact that somebody called and asked about a septic permit might mean that they're going to move forward without a permit. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, that would give you a little indication. The phone call would. Mm-hmm.
Paragraph 19 talks about an April 22nd, 2020 letter. That was Exhibit 3 that I gave you, right?
Yes.
And in fact, that was more than a year ago now, right?
Yes.
Are you aware of any other demand letters sent to any of the defendants regarding projects at Motorsport Ranch?
No.
Now, if you turn to the second page of Exhibit 3, there's no signature in the signature block. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I'm going to assume from that that you don't know whether it was sent and whether it was actually sent and whether it was received. You don't personally know that, correct?
Well, when I checked with the attorneys for the city, I thought they told me they had receipts for the registered letter. Yeah, for the certified mail.
Okay. So you're certain it was received, or you think it was received?
Objection form.
I don't know.
And let me turn to, where is it in here? I'm sorry, I'm looking for a specific reference.
Counselor, I know that we're under a time crunch here and all of this is new, but I did just track the first certified mail, and according to the U.S. Postal Service, that letter was delivered and received.
On paragraph, let's see, I'm on the second page of Exhibit 3. And the second page and the second to the last paragraph, the third line, this letter that is Exhibit 3 says that MSR should comply, and it gives a deadline of Monday, April 27th, 2020. Isn't that right?
That's what it reads.
And that was actually an entire year ago from today, April 27th, 2021, right?
Yes, correct.
You have Mr. Farr's phone number, don't you?
Yes.
And you have his email?
Oh, yes.
You've never called him or emailed him to talk to him and ask him why he's not letting the inspector on the premises, have you?
No.
In fact, just a few weeks ago, Mr. Farr ran into you at the City Council offices and he asked you if everything was okay, and you said yes, everything was okay. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes. It wasn't a conversation, he was passing by.
Still, you didn't take the opportunity to say, hey, you know, here in the next couple days we're going to be filing a lawsuit, did you?
I can't remember what the timing was, but I'm not going to even attempt. Let me just say this. I don't know if we had already filed suit or not. I can't remember.
Okay. Well, between the time of April 22nd, 2020, the date of Exhibit 3, and when you did file the lawsuit, you've had 0 conversations with Mr. Farr in which you said, hey, you've got to clean up the building permit situation, correct?
I don't know.
You certainly can't remember any as you sit here, can you?
I don't know.
And in fact, let me drop that. I'm going to turn to page 11 of Exhibit 2, going back to Exhibit 2, which is the application. At the very top of page 11, there's a sentence that says, there has been no verification that the building materials, methods, or designs of the MRS properties comply with the building code standards and practices. Do you see that?
I see that.
Okay. I want to focus on those words, no verification that the building materials, methods, or designs. I want to focus on those words for a moment. That's what we talked about at the beginning of this deposition, right? That's your concern about that the inspector hasn't been there, so there might be safety concerns, right?
When someone doesn't get a permit and they proceed with building and just ignore it, there's concern for safety, safety, safety.
As you sit here, though, you don't know whether or not the building materials are good or bad. You're just concerned that they might be bad, right?
Correct.
Same for the building methods. You don't know whether the building methods were bad. You're just concerned they might have been, correct?
Correct.
And the same with the designs. You don't know whether they were bad. You just are concerned they might be.
Correct.
I'm going to turn to the very last page of Exhibit 2, which is your verification. That's your signature on that last page of Exhibit 2, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it says it was sworn to on April 13th, 2021. Do you see that?
Yes.
Was that the day you actually signed it?
Yes.
Okay. Where were you when you signed this verification? That's the last page to Exhibit 2.
I was most likely in the city hall.
Do you remember where you were?
You mean in at my desk?
Do you remember whether you were at the city hall? Were you at attorney's offices? Were you at a bank getting this notarized?
No, I was at City Hall getting it notarized by the city secretary.
Okay. What time of day was that?
It would be between 8:30 and 1 p.m.
During-
8:30 a.m. and 1 p.m.
Okay. Is Catherine Freud the city secretary?
Yes.
Let me just, was the city inspector, let me ask it this way, is the city inspector an employee of the City of Cresson?
No.
He's an independent contractor?
Correct.
Okay. How long has he been an independent contractor for the City of Cresson?
He has been there since, I mean, I don't know.
But before you?
But
before you were there?
Oh, I don't know. Several years. I mean, I just don't know exactly.
Okay. Were you any sort of elected official with the City of Cresson before you became mayor?
I was not elected. I was served on the city council by appointment.
Okay. When did that start?
In January of 2019.
Who appointed you as city council member in January 2019?
The council.
Was that to replace somebody?
Yes.
Who were you replacing?
Ron Piles, P-Y-L-E-S.
What happened to Ron Piles?
He had a heart attack.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
And passed away.
That is too bad. All right, so focusing back on that, on the city inspector, do you know how many inspections the city inspector has performed at Motorsport Ranch?
No.
And you don't know how many times Mr. Farr has called for inspections?
No.
Do you know how many times Mr. McKenzie has asked to come inspect anything at Motorsport Ranch?
I think it'd be safe to say many times.
But you don't know
Oh,
any
I don't know
specifics.
calling though. No, no.
Okay, and you don't know whether he was calling or texting, and you don't know how many times he was asking to be permitted to go inspect?
No.
Okay. Sorry about my stomach growling.
We have snacks if you...
I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to be good. to show you now what's been marked for identification as exhibit number 4, which is some minutes from the City of Cresson City Council meeting from March 16th, 2021. Do you recognize these minutes?
Yes.
Under the bottom part down here, it talks about the Planning and Zoning Commission agenda, a public hearing regarding a request for the following variance from the subdivision ordinance was received from Tina Petit Conway. That's you, correct?
Tina Petit Conway.
As soon as I said it, I knew I'd
That's okay. You were
mispronounced
trying
it.
not to say Petit.
I
So you're getting
apologize.
closer.
I'm getting closer. But that's you, right? I mean, that's you requesting the variance, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that's for the land that is not yours, that you are the trustee and the beneficiary of.
Correct. On behalf of my mom, so I'm her trustee.
And that's you seeking variances against the ordinances and the zoning ordinances of the City of Cresson for this project, correct?
Correct.
On the second page of Exhibit 4, it's talking about the Great Race. Do you see that?
Yes.
What is the Great Race?
This is the first time we will host the Great Race in Granbury and Cresson, Texas. And it's antique cars that make a long journey through and around and end up in Cresson and Granbury. And that's all.
Is it a good thing to have that kind of traffic coming through Cresson for the City of Cresson?
I would think so.
Helps the businesses, the restaurants, the hotels, etc.?
Somewhat.
Going back to this Planning and Zoning Commission agenda, there's a reference to a Trace Stevie. Who is Trace Stevie?
He's an engineer.
Is he an engineer for the Petite project? Or what is
no,
the name
he's
of this
not-
project? I'm sorry.
I don't have an engineer. The Petites don't have an engineer.
Okay. What is his connection to the subdivision ordinance variance that's being sought there?
Objection form.
He works for the developers.
Have you ever had conversations with him?
Objection form. You can answer these questions.
Try,
whether-
yes, I have.
Okay. And I'm sorry, did you say he's the engineer for the developer that's going on to your mother's trust property?
Yes.
Okay. In that connection, do you work with him at all? Do you have communications with him?
I really don't get involved with the developer portion of that.
Okay.
In speaking with him.
Who is the contractor for that project?
Objection form.
Do you want their names?
Yeah, I just wanted to know what the identity of the contractor was. Is it?
It's two gentlemen.
Objection form.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. It's two gentlemen,
All right.
Tom Mercer and Morris Duree, D-U-R-E-E.
Do they own a company that's the contractor, or is it just two guys?
No,
Objection form. You have to give me a second, please.
I know.
Go ahead.
They own a company,
What's the name of the company?
Granbury Realty.
What kind of development is this going to be?
Objection form.
You can answer.
I know, but I'm just really struggling. I mean, anyway, homes.
Okay. So what are you struggling about?
Objection form. Do you need to take a break, Mayor?
No, keep going, Lisa. I'm fine.
Well, I'm concerned because obviously I need to get good testimony, and I don't want.
No, I'm fine. Please
Okay.
proceed.
All right. So the struggles that you're going through are not.
No,
gonna
there's no
affect-
struggles. I just,
It's hard to see, Council, the relevance of
Thank
these
you.
questions that we're here on Mr. Farr's conduct, and you've turned this into a personal vendetta against the mayor.
Ditto. This is in Exhibit 4, the variance that's being sought for this development that's going to occur on the land that's owned by your mother. That's not the only variance that's had to be sought for that project, is it?
Objection, forum.
I think you're correct. I mean, it's common with developments that you have to have different variances. I mean,
I'm going to show you now what we've marked for identification as Exhibit 5. This is minutes from March 23rd. And again, Exhibit 5 includes an agenda item and minutes discussing the variance, correct?
Objection, forum.
there's different steps to variances, and that's just the final step.
Okay. If you turn to page 2 of Exhibit 5, right before the letter B, the final sentence, and the final paragraph there is talking about Councilperson Farr, and that's Jack Farr, correct? He requested a point of order.
Wait. Where are you, Lisa?
Sure, I'm on page 2 of Exhibit 5. You have Exhibit 5, page 2, at the top. Right above the section B.
Oh, okay.
Is a paragraph talking about Councilperson Farr. Have you seen that now?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And he was objecting that the variance request was uncalled for and a showing of favoritism. Do you see that?
I do see that.
Do you remember him making that objection?
No.
You don't remember him making it at all?
Oh, no, absolutely not. On matters that have any connection to anything to do with my family, including my mother, I first sign an affidavit to say that I'm not.
You're not going to participate?
Right. And
You're going to
secondly, I remove myself from the council chambers. So therefore, I didn't even know he said that. He said that while I was out of the room. The other thing I'll tell you is that that's fine for him to say that, but we are very developer friendly in Cresson because we are booming. So it's not like something previous. Jack, are you laughing? Because that's very distracting. For example, oh, I won't go on.
Yeah, I do need to object to the non-responsive portion of that answer. But you did sign Exhibit 5, correct?
Well, yes.
Okay, so you are aware that Mr. Farr made that objection. You just weren't present to hear it. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago that you sign an affidavit whenever the City Council is going to address something that deals with your interests, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you now what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 6, which is another letter from the Reed Law Firm, dated April 9th, 2021 to Mr. Farr. Have you seen Exhibit 6 before?
Yes.
Now, Exhibit 6 is addressed to Mr. Farr, and it requests him to sign an affidavit. Can you turn to page 2 of Exhibit 6? Is that the type of affidavit you were referring to a moment ago?
I believe it is.
Okay. Turning back to the front page of Exhibit 6, this talks about Mr. Farr's involvement with a company, Vale Management Company, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, the second paragraph says contemplated litigation with Vale Management Company will be discussed. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Nowhere in there does it say litigation with superformance, does it?
I don't see it on there.
And in fact, you don't see anywhere where it says contemplated litigation with you personally either, does it?
Do you mean Jack personally?
Correct.
Oh.
Let me be clear on the question. Exhibit 6 does not say that there's going to be an executive session about contemplated litigation with Jack Farr individually, does it?
Correct.
All right, now I'm going to show you what we've marked for identification as Exhibit 7. And this is the agenda for the April 13th, 2021 City Council meeting, correct?
Correct.
And it says at the very bottom that there's notice of this, Exhibit 7, was posted on the 9th day of April 2021. Was that correct?
Yes.
So I assume it was posted on the 9th day of April, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't pick up the phone and call Jack and say, hey, we're considering suing you individually, did you?
No, I didn't.
Nor did you pick up the phone and say, we're considering suing Superformance, did you?
No.
Counsel, just at some point when you're at a break in the next couple of minutes, I need a restroom break when you get a minute.
You bet. Let me get to a good stopping point. One more exhibit.
Thank you, ma'am.
Unless you need to break sooner.
I can do for one more exhibit.
Lisa,
do you need a break right now?
Oh, no. In fact, not. As a standard practice, we send out the agenda every Friday before 12 noon for the following Tuesday of the applicable city council meeting. And of course, Councilman Farr would get that.
I'm going to show you now what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 8, which is the actual minutes from the April 13th City Council meeting, correct?
Correct.
And it says at the very top, we've got who's present. You, Ron Becker was late, he had a fire call. Kenneth Besenhofer, did I get close on pronunciation?
Very good.
Jack Farr was absent, Pam Manley was there, and Lisa Clement was there. Do you see that?
Incorrect. Ugh. Lisa Clement was not there.
She wasn't physically present at all?
No, that's a typo.
Have these are not signed because I pulled them off the website, but have they been signed already?
April 13th, April 27th. Let me think about this. I am not for sure. Okay.
Will you take a moment and read over Exhibit 8 and see if there's anything else in Exhibit 8 that is incorrect or a typo?
I don't see anything.
Okay. So tell me how these minutes get made. Who is recording? Who is typing them? How? Just give me a brief description of how they come to be created.
It's the role of the city secretary.
Okay. And who is the city secretary?
Catherine Freud, F-R-O-Y-D.
In fact, she's the notary that signed your verification, right?
She is, yes.
Okay. Does she handwrite them? Does she record them with audio tape? How does she get the information that she puts into them?
Both.
So she does have an audio tape and she has a handwritten note?
Yes.
And where are those audio tapes and handwritten notes kept?
At City Hall.
Are they stored on a computer? Are they stored in hard copy?
Not for sure about the computer. Oh, I'm sorry. No, these can be found on the city website or a hard copy in the files at City Hall.
All right. My question was unclear, and I apologize. I was specifically
I'm sorry.
asking about Ms. Freud's notes and audio tapes, where those are kept.
I don't know about her notes, but I know that we store the video. I don't know. I don't know where we store it.
There's a video as well as an audio
Not a
tape?
video, audio.
Okay.
Sorry.
So tell me about this secret meeting that was held, the executive session.
Objection form.
Well, was the contents of the meeting public?
Objection form.
You can answer.
There's no secret meeting.
Okay.
There is an executive session which is held in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, and that's all done properly. And what was your second question, Lisa?
Well, my question was why the objection to the word secret? I mean, it wasn't public, was it? I mean, it was executive session. It wasn't public.
Well, I think secret kind of is a bad word to say, because if you post it that it's going to happen down at the post office and at City Hall and on the website, I would not consider that to be secret.
Well, it's not secret that you're having the meeting, but the contents of the meeting were secret, right?
Objection form.
Secret, the content. What happens in the meeting stays in the meeting, and we do not take any action in the meeting. And that is, I think that is, I mean, that's required by law to do it that way. That's how cities do that, Lisa.
What were the topics of this executive session meeting?
Objection form. We're getting, I think you can talk generally about the topics, but not the information that's exchanged in the meeting.
The information that exchanged is secret. So let me get back to the question.
No, it's not.
What are the general topics that were discussed during the executive session?
Counsel, it's not secret, it's privileged, and there's a difference.
What were the topics that were discussed at the executive session?
It was the exact thing that was listed on the agenda.
Okay, regarding...
So it was talking about regarding an attorney pending or contemplated litigation and or a settlement offer.
What pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offer was discussed?
Objection, privileged. You don't have
Who
to
was
answer this.
present? Who was present at the meeting?
Myself, Ron Becker, Pam Manley, Kenneth Benzenhofer, and Warren McCamey.
Who is Warren McCamey?
He's a council member. Where it should be Lisa Clement's name, it should be Warren McCamey.
Okay.
And also, Mark Stout, Chris Arisco, Sam Reed, and Steve Reed.
Anybody else?
No.
Was the city secretary there to take notes?
Oh, no.
Did anybody record the meeting?
Oh, no.
How long did the meeting last?
Um, 7-11. approximately 40 minutes.
And you're...
Wait, is that right? 7:11 around to 8. No, no. Shortly after 7:11, so we probably went in there at 7:15, and open session reconvened at 8:50, just like it says in the notes.
Okay, so you didn't have a specific memory of how long it lasted. You were just looking at the minutes to figure out how long it lasted?
Correct.
Okay. Were any documents given to the council members before they went into executive session?
No.
So no memos, no drafts of pleadings?
No.
Council, is this a good breaking point?
Yes, I forgot. Thank you for reminding me.
Thank you.
Off the record at 11:10 a.m.
Y'all were talking at the same time. I have no idea what your question was.
On the record at 11:34 a.m.
During the break, I explained to opposing counsel that the mayor would like to revise her answer concerning what time the verification was signed, and asked opposing counsel if she would like to re-ask the question or have me ask the question during cross-examination. So, Lisa, I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, I don't mind which way it happens. You know, obviously we're just here trying to get the truth. So I assume that's what's happened is you've remembered now that an answer you gave earlier was not quite accurate, and you want to correct it. And it was the answer as to when and where you signed the verification, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so tell me what the correct answer is.
The correct answer is I was in City Hall, and it was after 8:50 p.m., so it was probably 9 p.m. in my office, and the Catherine Freud was the notary.
Okay, so it was after the executive session that happened on April 13th, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In fact, I'm going to show you what we're going to mark as Exhibit 9 for one quick question. Exhibit 9 is a copy of the petition that was filed on behalf of City of Cresson, absent its exhibits. Do you see that?
Yes.
And in fact, in the upper right-hand corner of Exhibit 9, which is the plaintiff's original petition, it says it was electronically filed at 4/13/2021 at 9:58 p.m. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that was immediately after then that executive session that you had with the City Council, correct?
It's about an hour later.
Okay, sure. So an hour later after the executive session. Okay. So during the executive session, then, you were given copies of the petition and the other papers that were filed?
Objection, privileged.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it is privileged, but that's okay. So prior to the executive session, prior to that April 13th City Council executive session meeting, what communications did you have with other City Council members about potentially suing Superformance, Veil Management, and Jack Farr, if any?
Objection form.
I don't know.
Okay. Do you think you had any, and you just don't remember them, or you just don't really think any occurred prior to that executive session?
I think I answered a question from one council member, but I don't really remember the details of it.
Okay. And other than that, you don't remember any specific communications with other council members prior to that executive session meeting about suing Mr. Farr, Superformance, or Veil Management?
Objection form.
Say it again.
I said objection form, I'm sorry. Her question, she may has the court reporter repeat it or repeat it herself.
I don't remember.
bring your attention back to Exhibit 8 for a minute. That was the minutes of April 13th where Lisa Clement was listed as being present and you said she was not.
Correct. That's a typo.
Was she present for any of the meeting?
No. Oh, wait. No. No, no, no.
So she wasn't there that night at all?
Correct. In any capacity.
Okay. Who is Lisa Clement?
She's a citizen in Cresson.
She's currently running for office, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. She's running for Jack Farr's seat on the City Council, isn't that right?
That is correct.
When is that election over?
Saturday, May 1st.
Have you talked with Ms. Clement at all about her run for office?
Early on, she asked me if I thought, you know, if she thought that would be helpful, and I said, you know, that's up to you. That's a big job to take on.
Have you made recommendations to other people that they vote for Ms. Clement?
Nope.
Did you ask her to run for City Council?
Absolutely not.
You made no encouragement to her whatsoever?
No.
Okay. Did you give her any funding or supplies for her to run, for example, for signs or anything?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Why are you so vehement about not doing so?
I'm kind of insulted by the question, but go ahead.
Okay. Why are you insulted by the question?
Because I wouldn't do that.
Okay. Why wouldn't you do that?
Because it's not legal. I mean, I just don't think that's fair.
Okay.
In the mayor role, go ahead.
You think it's illegal for you to support
not
another
illegal.
candidate?
I just think, I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised you would ask that. That's all.
What was your profession before you became mayor of Cresson? If you had one.
I ran global call centers for outsourcing companies. And in my last role, I was an account manager for a pharmaceutical company in Frisco.
Did you run global call centers and be the account management at the same time, or that's the same thing, or I'm confused. Help me understand.
No, the running global call centers was most of my career, and in the last year and a half, I just took on one account, but not just. I took on a large pharmaceutical account and was their account manager.
And so you gave up the global call centers to be the pharmaceutical rep?
No, I wasn't a pharmaceutical rep. They were an existing customer of my employer, and they asked me to take a promotion and be their senior account manager.
I see. All right. So you were still working for global call centers?
No, I was still working for a company called CompuCom. The global call centers is a role. The
it's not a name.
company is CompuCom.
All right. So you were working for CompuCom that entire time, just in different roles?
My entire career?
No, I'm sorry, those last few years before you became mayor of Cresson.
Yes, and I had a consulting job while after I retired from CompuCom, and it was basically very specific recruiting.
Employment recruiting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When did you retire from CompuCom?
April of 2016. I hope that, it might be 2017, somewhere in there.
Close enough, thank you. Okay. Let me turn our attention to the inspector, Mr. McKenzie. Do you know if he has any certifications as any sort of inspector?
I know that he has a history of being an inspector, and he started out with the City of Fort Worth, but I don't know all of his credentials, but he can tell you.
How many days a week does he work for Cresson?
It depends on the request.
He works for other cities as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And does he work directly for the City of Cresson, or does he work for a company that is retained by Cresson?
He's a private contractor.
Individually, in his individual capacity?
Yes.
Okay. I was curious in the petition where it talks about AAA
Quality?
yeah, something like that. I'm sorry, I don't recall the name. Is that the company, is that his company, or is that a company he works for?
I believe that's his company.
So when the City of Cresson writes him checks, do they write him individually checks, or do they write them to that entity?
To that entity.
Okay. How is he paid? Is he paid per job, per day, per hour? What?
It depends on the job and the permitting, so I'll leave those details to him.
Do you know how much the City of Cresson has paid him in the last, or how much, for example, in 2020 they paid the city inspector?
No, but we have it on file.
Now, one thing I'm a little concerned about is earlier you were talking about struggling, and I want to make sure that you feel like the answers you've given me were the best you were able to give today.
Yes.
Okay.
We can put that to bed.
All right. And I also have to ask whether you've ever been convicted of a felony?
No.
Any arrests?
I'm having to pause on purpose, but the answer is no.
And so no convictions?
Correct.
No medications that would affect your testimony today, correct?
Correct.
And just so you know, those are standard questions that every attorney asks every witness. They're not meant to be offensive. Hopefully your attorney warned you of that. Let me ask a few record-keeping types of questions. At the City of Cresson, how does it keep track of what construction projects are ongoing? Does it have files? Does it delegate all of it to the city inspector? Help me understand that process.
The process includes both the city inspector and the city secretary. And typically they have a file per project.
And so both the city secretary and the city inspector will put documents into the file for each project that's going on in the City of Cresson?
Yes.
Okay. Are you involved in sending out notices of violation for city zoning or city ordinances?
Objection form.
Are you personally involved in it?
Objection form.
In sending out, can you give me an example?
Well, sure. You started the deposition, you were talking about driving through the city because you had some problem areas where some residents weren't keeping things clean and orderly and they were violating some ordinances. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So are you personally the person who would send out a notice of those kinds of violations?
Between myself and the city secretary, and yes, and the city secretary, that would be yes, but we usually consult with our city attorneys before. And it's things such as high grass, junk in the yard.
So the city attorney would be the person most knowledgeable about what violation letters have gone out?
City attorney, no.
Okay, who would be the person most knowledgeable about what violation notices have gone out from the city?
Between myself and the city secretary.
About how many violation notices have you and the city secretary sent out for non-residential violations in the last couple of years, since you've been mayor?
Objection form.
Possibly 10. And some of those are like reminders, repeat reminders.
Give me a couple of examples of kinds of things that those approximately 10 notices were about.
And like I said earlier, it can be just, typically it's just keeping your residence tidy.
Yeah, a small follow-up question on those 10, approximately 10 violation letters. The example you gave was sort of a residential violation, the landscaping kind of issues and the trash kind of issues. Were any of those for non-residential violations, or were they all residential to your memory?
I think they were all residential to the best of my recollection. I'd have to pull my files.
Okay. Past witness.
I'm going to reserve all of our questions either for the injunction hearing or at the time of trial.
And I'm the same performance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I agree with that.
And maybe just for clarification, are y'all representing different entities here?
Yes, I'm on behalf of Superformance, and I have the same reservations as you do.
Fantastic. And
Vale and Mr. Farr individually.
thank you very much. Thank you for the clarification. So we're done today?
We're
For
done
this?
with this witness, yes. Thank you for your cooperation
Thank you,
today.
Lisa.
I'll put it back here at 11:51 a.m.
Okay. And
And Mark, just for me, do you want a copy?